Well, we're going to stay with President Trump's visit to the United Kingdom and turn to our next guest, Mick Mulvaney, former Chief of Staff to the US President Donald Trump. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mick. Always a pleasure talking to you. You're probably remembering with, I hope, some affection, your own visit to the United Kingdom in June 2019, which is when President Trump last was afforded a state visit. What sort of memories spring to mind from those events of 6 years ago?
Oh, a couple of them are very inside baseball. As someone who was heavily involved in putting on state dinners at the White House, just to watch the precision with which the event in London came off was impressive to me from a technological, sort of practical standpoint. But from a more policy-oriented, more maybe subjective analysis, I remember very vividly the relationship that the president developed with both, at the time, the Queen and then Prince Charles, now King Charles, and the friendship that I think sort of started to build up between, especially the two gentlemen. They got along extraordinarily well. They seemed to, they had some common interests. They don't agree on architecture, for example, but they both are students of architecture. And of course, people don't realize this. Donald Trump has won several environmental awards for his golf courses, one of which bumps up against one of the royal estates in Scotland. So there was a broad variety of discussion that went off seamlessly, which is exactly what you would expect from the royal family.
Okay, this is of course a historic state visit because it's the second state visit Mr. Trump has been given. It's a very rare honor. Why do you think he's getting such a rare honor?
Well, for a variety of reasons. It is 6 years on, which I think a lot of people realize, that it's been quite a while. You have new government leadership, you have new leadership in the monarchy. So I think it's appropriate to do that and to have this meeting. And certainly the relationship, I think back in 2019, we were in the middle of Brexit. Now it's finished. So this, well, it's still the same two countries and some of the same people. A good deal of time has passed. I think it's appropriate to sort of have this meeting to continue to build the special relationship between the two countries.
And of course, this is an event that, when you look at it on television screens, I mean, you'd almost say it was made for television, all the pomp and pageantry and the carriages. And the US brings a lot of excitement to the table as well with helicopters and the Beast and all the rest of it. How closely followed is this in the United States, this kind of a state visit?
Yeah, ordinarily the answer to that is not very much. We don't pay attention to state visits, generally speaking. The time zones often contribute to that. But this is different. You know that the American public follows what happens in the UK, especially with the royal family. So there's that interest at that level. The pomp and circumstance will be unparalleled. I remember getting my instructions for the white tie dinner at Buckingham Palace, and they sent over the protocol officer from the State Department, and they made it very clear to us that there is no higher level of protocol than a white tie dinner with the monarch. So it is the very highest sort of pinnacle of these types of things. And you're right, the pomp and circumstance, which Trump loves, does appear to be made for television, but it's great for television. So no, I think this one will be closely watched for a variety of reasons back home.
You say Trump loves this. I mean, what does he like about a visit like this? What did he say about his last visit? What made him say this was such a great trip?
Yeah, look, he loves these types of, he loves the pomp and the circumstance. He's a made-for-television person, not just a made-for-television president. I mean, he made his name for himself. I know him as a businessman who wrote books about business and so forth, but most people in this country know him as a television star. And he understands that medium very, very closely, very precisely. And sometimes you wonder if he's not sort of, tailoring things for television. In fact, I think he probably is. So this is going to have tremendous value to him, tremendous value to the American public, and I think tremendous value to the relationship between the two countries. But it's going to be fun to watch. I don't often miss my job in the White House, but I certainly am a little bit envious of my colleagues who will be attending this trip, because it is truly, well, I used to say it's once in a lifetime, but for some of them, it will be twice.
Yeah, well, certainly for President Trump. I mean, just casting your mind back to June 2019, I mean, it sounds like everything went really well, but were there any glitches? Did any sort of protocol issues stand out for you as being perhaps a little bit of a hiccup, shall we say?
No, other than having Americans try to find out what you wear to a white tie dinner, which we don't ever do. We have black tie dinners. I ended up having to borrow Larry Kudlow's tails and his jacket because I didn't have them, and many of us don't. So no, there were no hiccups. It was extraordinarily smooth. I think we landed in the morning, had luncheon at Buckingham Palace. I sat with the Queen, with now the Queen, with Camilla, and then the president, I think, arrived at one point by helicopter on the back lawn to watch the dressing of the lines and so forth. Stunning visuals. But no, I don't remember. Tom, it's a good question. I don't remember anything not going off exactly as it's supposed to. Which, again, when you're talking about something of this scale, is a minor miracle.
It certainly is. I mean, it's also sort of what many think the British are best at, putting on sort of choreographed events and marches and parades and this sort of thing. And I wanted to ask you, obviously the UK is rich in terms of heritage. It's got castles, it's got these monarchs, it's got jewels, it's got all these ingredients. And I want to ask you, as a non-UK citizen, do you think that gives the United Kingdom some sort of an edge over other countries?
Oh, it does, but it's more than just that. It's not the jewels or the pomp and the circumstance. It's the culture. The reason you and I can have this conversation is that we speak the same language, and the histories are very closely intertwined. So yes, all of the things you've just mentioned are important, and it's one of the reasons that we sort of follow British politics or the British royal family sort of like a sport. We pay attention to it. It gets good media coverage here and so forth. But that's just the surface. What you're really talking about is a cultural, almost familial relationship between the two countries. And I think the events like this just bring out the very best in that. This is not the be all and end all. This is sort of this is not the substance of the matter. This is the icing on the cake, as we say in American English.
You're making it sound like the state of the health of the transatlantic relationship is pretty robust.
Well, look, we're testing all of our relationships right now. I think I'd be naive to not say that's the case, including with some of our longtime allies. Look at the relationship right now, which is fairly well strained with Canada. So Trump is trying to reset all of the relationships. Yes, he is. He's trying to reset sort of that Cold War mentality about America carrying the rest of the West on its military backs and so forth through both our defense policies and our trade policies. All of those things are true. But your question is a good one. Is this relationship in a good position? It is. There's a reason, I believe, that you folks invited Trump on this visit, and I believe there's a reason he accepted. He wants this relationship to continue to thrive. Keep in mind, his mother is Scottish, born in Scotland. One of the most touching things I think I remember from and I know it's not your question, but it is an interesting memory. The dinner at Buckingham Palace, on the way out, I believe they had brought a bunch of things out of the British Museum, including some things that were specific to the Trump family. They brought the Trump family tartan, which I believe Donald is MacLeod, and they brought out the family tartan for that. And that was very touching to him, and he really appreciated that. So there's a lot more to this relationship than just this. It's very, very deep, but it is a relationship we don't have with hardly any other country in the entire world.
You've mentioned the strong ties between President Trump and the now King, and back then in 2019, the Prince of Wales. You haven't mentioned the Prime Minister, and at the time, just casting our minds back to June 2019, well, for people who know British history, it was 1 month later that Theresa May, the then Prime Minister, was ousted from her job, and Boris Johnson replaced her. Was she looking vulnerable back in June 2019? Because you haven't mentioned her. I mean, was she sort of overlooked on that visit?
Yeah, I didn't not mention her on purpose. But no, I don't think she got along very well with Trump. Listen, some people don't. A lot of people don't. I mean, he's a very complex figure, and he can grate on some people. And I just don't ever think Theresa got on the same page as Donald Trump. Boris certainly did. Boris Johnson, I remember meeting with him at the G7 in Biarritz later in 2019, and he and the president got along famously. All of that being said, I think Keir Starmer has actually done as good a job as anybody anybody. I was a little bit surprised at how well he was received when he came to Washington, D.C., and how strong the relationship was, especially in light of the fact of some of the things that Starmer and some of his team had said about Donald Trump before the election. But I have to tell you that from an objective outside sort of perspective right now, someone who's not on the inside, so the outside looking in, but who knows how the place looks or works, I think Keir Starmer is as on a good a footing with Donald Trump as any other world leader.
It's interesting because domestically, he looks really vulnerable. I mean, some of the opinion polls suggest he's the most unpopular leader in the Western world, and that's really quite saying something. And, you know, when you think about the psyche of President Trump, and you know him better than anyone, and maybe you can bring something to the table on this. I mean, he doesn't seem to like weak people, and you know, Sir Keir Starmer looking vulnerable politically at home. Do you think that somehow undermines the relationship a bit?
No, I don't. Keep in mind, and this is the case, I think, in democracies across the world, you can be popular at one level and unpopular at another. Look, Donald Trump is a lot more popular in the United States than he is amongst Western European leaders. I can guarantee you that his approval rating amongst, say, the Germans and the French leadership would be extraordinarily low, but his approval ratings back home are very high. So those two, it's not unusual to have that sort of disconnect. No, I think Donald Trump likes people that he can do deals with, folks that he can speak frankly to, folks that he understands and has things in common with. And I think Keir has done a pretty decent job with that. So no, does it help him fix things domestically? It does not. But look, the job of any world leader is multifaceted. And again, I think as poorly as he may be doing domestically, he's pretty good with Donald Trump right now.
You mentioned Canadian sovereignty, and obviously the King of England is also the King of Canada. That's one possibly slightly thorny issue. Then there's obviously tariffs, there's Ukraine, there's Gaza. I mean, a lot of complicated conversations to be had, some perhaps thorny issues. And the King thrust into this position of really diplomat in chief in many ways. How skillful do you think the King of England is in this domain?
From everything that I saw in the trip in 2019, I thought he was extraordinarily competent. And again, I thought, and I can't stress this enough, Tom, his connection with Donald Trump was real. I don't believe they had met before that trip in 2019, but I think they generally enjoyed each other's company because, as I mentioned, those shared interests in things like architecture and the environment. People say, "Oh, Donald Trump is a transactional guy." We all like to do business with people that we like better than we do doing business with people that we don't like. Relationships matter. We're human beings. And I think there was a connection that these two gentlemen could be friends, and that always helps. It also helps you get through, for example, tough issues, as you just mentioned. Look, it's not going to be all, roses and butterflies on this trip. There's going to be trade issues to deal with. There's going to be Gaza to deal with, as you mentioned. I don't think the Canada thing is, I've never understood that, Tom. Part of me just thinks it's Donald Trump trolling the left, which he likes to do, sort of sometimes to just sort of prod them and get a response out of them. So I'm not sure that's going to be front and center on this discussion. But yeah, there's going to be some tough issues to deal with because there are tough issues in the world. But I keep coming back to the same thing. I think they're going to be able to talk about these in a way that Trump probably wouldn't talk about them with other world leaders.
Okay, so perhaps President Trump will give the King a bit of a nudge and say, don't take the Canada stuff too seriously. Perhaps that's a conversation they're going to have. One person that President Trump doesn't seem to like at all, and who doesn't seem to like him either, is the same mayor of London who was mayor of London back in 2019. I'm talking about Sadiq Khan. He's presumably going to be kept out of sight during this visit. What do you think President Trump has against him?
I don't know. Look, Trump doesn't like Democrat mayors. And I know that Mr. Khan is not technically a Democrat, but in our world, that's what he would be. I mean, look at Donald Trump loves cities. He does. He's a New York City boy, born and bred, and he wants to see vibrant and prosperous cities. And I think probably he's taking some of the same experiences that we've had in this country with Democrat-controlled cities and projecting that onto London. And of course, London is having some of the same issues that some of the larger cities in our country are going through. Keep in mind, I think 20 of the top 22 cities in my country are controlled by Democrats, and many of them have been for more than a half a century. So I think it's that experience, his own experience in the United States around left-leaning leadership of large cities, and he's looking at Mayor Khan and saying, well, this is more of the same. This is the same as Gavin Newsom, who's not a mayor, obviously, but mayors of Chicago, mayors of Los Angeles, mayors of New York, and so forth, that he thinks are pointed in the wrong direction. So I think it's just a carryover from his American experience.
Again, obviously in 2019 there were protests. We can expect there to be more protests. Well, there already apparently are some protests in London today. I mean, are they embarrassing for the president? Did he take that personally from your recollection of 2019? The fact that people were out on the street, there was that big balloon of President Trump or a depiction of President Trump. Did that annoy him, embarrass him? What was his reaction?
Embarrass is not the right word. At some point, I mean, I don't think anybody would like it if we're being made fun of in front of tens of thousands of people. That being said, when you choose to do what Donald Trump has done for a living, to be president of the United States, you know this comes with the territory. It just does. Look, the left has been doing it to Republican presidents forever. They protested George Bush. They protested Ronald Reagan. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, many Brits thought that, Reagan was dead set on blowing up the world in a nuclear war. So this is part and parcel of the job. And to a certain extent, I don't want to make too big a deal about this. I think Donald Trump might be disappointed if it wasn't happening. Just because I think he knows that if he's doing the right thing, he's going to make an omelet, he's going to break some eggs, and people are going to be upset about that. So I think if it was just quiet and sort of blasé because Donald Trump was coming to town, then Donald Trump might see that as him not doing his job.
Okay, as we bring this conversation to a close, let me put this to you. Who gains more from a visit like this, the host nation or the visitor, in this case, the President of the United States?
I think it's a fair question, but I think the answer is, and I'm not trying to dodge your question. If it's done properly, it will be mutually beneficial. The whole idea here is to reinforce relationships, and relationships have to be two-way streets. I can't have a good relationship with you if you don't have a good relationship with me. So if it's properly done, as it was in 2019, the relationship will get stronger. And you'll see that, Tom, and this is the one thing we should watch for, is what initiatives come immediately afterwards? What doors are opened on this trip? What conversations are started on this trip that then turn into policies, procedures, and initiatives in the coming days and weeks? I think that's how you can know if this was a successful trip or not. If it's a dismal failure, you'll know that right away because someone will get up and walk out of the meeting. I don't see that happening here. I've seen meetings like that happen. We did that with Kim Jong-un in South Vietnam, in Vietnam. But if it's a successful trip, which you'll see the fruits of it coming in the days afterwards, and that's what I'll be watching for from this side of the Atlantic.
And just lastly, Mick, one memory etched in your memory from that 2019 visit, something that really stood out for you. What would it be?
You mean aside from wearing somebody else's suit to the dinner? The arrival of the president via helicopter on the back lawn of Buckingham Palace and the reception there. Still, as I sing here, it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's the type of thing that we don't have as Americans. We have helicopters, we have troops, but it was one of the most visually and even orally. It was the sounds, striking type of experience I've had. Again, you would say it's once in a lifetime, but for some people, it's not.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Mick Mulvaney, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
Thanks, Tom.